Hi there, Lee Farnell here, Leading Your Best Life. Thanks for listening. Now look, sometimes you don't know what gold you've got in the backyard till you go back over it. Just recently I rediscovered an interview I'd done with an old client and mate of mine, Damian. There's so much in the interview and I was re-listening to it, and there's a part of the interview that's particularly important for business owners, sales managers, people who want to grow their business and create a culture of high-performing sales teams. So in this section, I'm going to share with you what we covered, and then I'm going to debrief it at the end. Listen up, because if you're into sales, you'll want to listen to this.
Then after that printing career, if you like, I started in radio with Mix 94.5 and spent a total of 15 years there. And Mix 94.5 and 92.9, it's the same company. And had various roles, and mainly in sales, but then I always enjoyed the creative side of presentations. So I designed my own job whereby if any of our reps had, I think 16 reps at the time on the two stations, if anyone had a client who wished to spend, was in the market to spend $50,000 plus, I'd come up with a presentation idea, which was quite creative. So I worked in my own little bubble, which I absolutely loved, and no one knew what I did, which was just perfect. And we wrote some amazing money for the Austereo network at the time. Then left there and joined the newspapers, community newspaper group, where you and I worked together. Then the events industry was next, sorry. Worked in the events industry for about 8 years and ran a large international events company. Had an office in Subiaco and another in Melbourne. And we produced, with just 16 people total, we actually produced something like 280 shows per year. So every Saturday night, always had about between 5 and 8 shows on somewhere.
What a career, mate! Yeah, what a career! I mean, as you know, you and I work together both in the events business and also in the
community newspaper.
But keep going, because this story is a fantastic story, mate. I know you're on a roll, so keep sharing, because talk about track record, and we'll come back and drill down on some of those. So, the events industry, community, keep going.
Yeah, so because I joined newspapers after working in radio for so long, it actually felt like I was going back into time. And there was always, they hated my philosophy on life is always, ask what if we can do this, what if, whereas no, we've always done it this way. That's what I got constantly in the newspaper game. So I only worked there for 2 years, but we had some sensational results and created new markets that they just didn't know they had. But they were glaringly obvious.
Let's just drill down on that for just a second, because we talk about different levels of thinking and different thinking when we're talking about the inner world creating and shaping the outer world. And, of course, straight away you've had a culture clash, and the different thinking between radio and the culture of radio and the allowance for creativity in radio versus newspapers, which often, in West Australia, they were pretty much monopolies, weren't they? Because you had the West Australian and community newspapers dominating their patch with little or no competition. And so because there wasn't competition, they were able to think like a monopoly. And that's what you hear in monopolies is we've never done it that way. We don't need to do it that way. So tell me a bit about your experience of the different thinking and how you did or didn't make progress with that.
Yeah, okay. Well, with the newspaper group, the community newspaper group is part of a larger group. So there was 17 weekly papers in Perth of community newspapers that we had to fill with advertising to make it work. And I was also responsible for the same in other states. So I was for a smaller percentage of the paper, fill content, if you like, of advertising in 111 other weekly newspapers around Australia. So it was massive, a lot of pressure in that. But the total sales force that were involved were all about just selling space. Yeah. And I said, no, we've got to change that culture. And it was like, go to a client and do you want to put an ad in the newspaper? That was basically how the process worked. I said, no, we've got to develop relationships and so forth with people. I used to have a whip, a work in progress meeting with every rep every week.
Yep.
And sure, they all had budgets, financial budgets that we had to achieve, but I never mentioned money in the whips. It was all about what budget of face-to-face calls, phone calls, and emails have you done that week,
Right.
And with the emphasis on face-to-face, get in front of clients and spend time with people.
Yeah.
Because our competitors don't. They just ring and say, do you want to buy an ad? So that was a real culture shift, and that's where you played a big role in that, Lee, in training the actual staff that I had in my agency side, advertising agency team.
Yep.
And not only did we really knock the top off the records, the sales records as such, but we also, between us, I believe we changed for the better a lot of lives of those fairly young crew, if you like. They were usually in their late 20s, yeah.
Let's just drill down on that, because one of the programs that we have is, there's two programs that we used there at Community Newspapers, the R Factor program, which talks about, as you say, relationships, frequency times quality of contact, and bringing that language and that thinking into that team, but also then the colour zone, the 4 steps to the sale approach, which we used in those days. And we introduced the colours so that people literally followed a process to have a quality conversation with the prospect to discover their needs and build the relationship using the R Factor and all of the science that we used. Let's just talk about that for a second, because the results, Damian, just restate the results for the listeners to what happened there when, and again, this is where I've often said, it's not just my tools and the systems and the information, but when we work in partnership with a willing manager, a national manager who can drive and coach and mentor internally, which was what you did. You took the information, we worked together on it. And mate, what were the results there that you said? You reminded me yesterday what happened there. Tell me what those results were.
I'm pretty sure that the number was by beating the previous sales record in a year, we improved it by 82%.
Oh my goodness!
And that's millions of dollars difference in revenue.
Yeah.
And as I say, we never spoke about money during these WIP meetings. It was always about how many times have you spoken to people and been with people and broken the bread with them,
Relationship, yeah.
Yep.
Broken the bread, I like that, as you say. And I know you were very big, as not only on relationships, but literally where you could get people into functions or breaking the bread. And I remember you said to me yesterday, when you left, people said later on, the fun has left the building. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've kept in contact with predominantly females that I had. I believe they're better salespeople than guys, even though I was one myself. But I worked with some brilliant women. And, building those relationships with people was what it was all about. And then the money will flow. And it certainly did. So
82% better than the last record. That's incredible.
Yeah, we did it in less than 2 years. I think it was 20 months or something from my start date to achieve that. So I was very proud of, not myself, but proud of the team, because obviously it was a team effort to bring home the bacon.
That's exactly what we mean by empowerment, giving people the skills, the knowledge, the motivation, making them feel safe enough to use the knowledge, and being in, we talk about ecosystem, but being in an environment where they feel that they can go and do it. You've given them the confidence. I mean, do you want to just talk to that for a second about the ecosystem that you and I, or, and I'll say primarily you, because you're there every day. I was coming in, I don't know, every couple of weeks or month or whatever it was that we were
I think it was fortnightly. Yeah.
Every fortnight. Tell us about the ecosystem and your philosophy around that kind of empowerment ecosystem.
Oh, well, by doing that, it actually gave me a lot of power It was just a tremendous joy I got from helping people. And as I say, the benefits flow on from that. But it doesn't take a lot to change culture within a group. And it's just, we've got to be honest with people. And probably the best rule or the best system that I ever had was one on respect. And this was something that I had a presentation that I did with my whole team every time we got a new employee. So they knew from day one what the culture was about. And it was purely about respect. So there was 3 levels of the respect that we used to go through, which was, first of all, respect yourself and look after yourself, be responsible. If you've got a big presentation on the morning, don't go out on the grog the night before. Look after your body. The second was respect the colleagues and the people that you work with, and the last one was respect the brand that pays us. So the company, don't ever bag the company when you're out socially or anything, because they're the ones who just paid your rent or your mortgage, call it when you see any of us, myself included, showing disrespect for any of those 3 things. So themselves or their colleagues or talking poorly about the brand. And I was guilty of all 3 myself from time to time. I was called on it by people, and they had the power to believe, or the belief to know that I would respect that they've called it, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, see, that's an important part of setting culture, setting ecosystem, is what happens in the induction phase, which is, we call that setting the fruit bowl, setting the context. And you've just done that using the 3 levels of respect, but also then giving people the authority to call, because in the absence of saying that, people do their own thing. And in most cases, their mum or their dad or their footy coach or others, they haven't had that conversation, but you've set the context from day one in terms of, this is how we want to play the game together around here. And as you say, you've given people the permission to call you as the leader manager as well, which is, I mean, again, people go, you can imagine the young 20-year-old going, what the hell? The boss has just said that I can call him as well. Wow. That's just changed the ball game straight away. Now, let's talk about, without using the person's name, talk about coaching conversations and respect. There was one particular, at that stage, girl, I suppose, I don't know, was she 19 or 20 or 21 or something, who hadn't been meeting people enough face-to-face. And you said, can you have a coaching conversation with her? And we did have that coaching conversation. And I said, what I want to do, and I think I talked to you about it, I said, what I want to do is find out what is going on between her ears, because we use the neuroscience of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and there's a presupposition in NLP which says people always act with good intention, even if what they're doing is ridiculous or stupid or not helping them achieve their goals. So I want to find out what her reality is, the thinking that's guiding her decision-making, to go, because you said to me, she's only doing 2 appointments a week, and she needs to be doing at least 8 appointments a week. They were roughly the numbers, weren't they? I don't remember.
I didn't, break their back, sort of force them. We had those rough guidelines, but and they were very, very achievable. It's just that with her and her, others around her about the same age, I think they were what we called the Y gen at the time, were all by email. They produce a generic proposal and email it to 50 people. So she's done 50 calls. No, you haven't. You've done 0 calls, So there was no personalisation. And I said, well, and in the follow-up, what's happened? Well, I emailed them. Yeah. And they haven't come back to me. Yeah. Well, that's where we stop, Okay, this has got to stop. While email is a great tool, obviously in business, it's got its limits, and especially young people that have trouble communicating because everything's by text or that. And, I believe that in another 15 years we might have a serious problem with trying to attract salespeople with any real experience because of that. We need to train these people old school, if you like, but that's what works. And that's what develops relationships. Good relationships equals good business,
Yeah, well, it's the R factor. It's a frequency times quality of contact. And obviously an email contact, there's nowhere near the quality of a face-to-face contact. Particularly where you start to, and as we do, find points in common, and that's the orange zone, the rapport factor. How much we've got in common, how much we actually know, like, and trust each other. Now we've got a whole other level of thinking and level of relationship going on. So we had that conversation, and I think I said to you at the time, when I asked her, because it will be a form of what we call perturbation, there might be tears. And if I do remember at the time, when I said to her, so what is your thinking? And she said, well, what would I go and talk to them about? And I said, because she said, the only time I go there is when there's a new rate card or something. What the heck? And so I said, well, just go and drop by. We call it the pop by. Just pop by and see what's going on. And so she started to do that. And, of course, she went on, and nowadays she's actually managing a whole team. So she's
in media, she is indeed.
An underperforming rep to now the whole journey. Of course, that must be 15 or how many years ago would that be now? I don't know how many.
Yeah, probably close to 15 maybe. Yep.
Yeah. So it's just a great story between that conversation and your coaching and mentoring. And in fact, I went on and she worked with me on another project where she was working with the company as the internal change agent. So it's just a beautiful story, which again comes back to the power of a mentor and a mentoring conversation where, it might just be one or two sentences with someone that
resonate. Yeah.
That resonates and changes their life. Coming back to you and being mentored by Paddy, give me one or two things that you recall Paddy saying to you, setting up those stores in Snap as a young person, that you recall him saying that, man, that made a difference. I flipped my thinking on its head or changed me in that moment. Can you recall any of those conversations with Paddy?
Yeah, most definitely. Paddy was a front runner in franchising within Australia, and he was one of the first to do it. And Snap was one of the very first success stories of creating a franchise, which he'd modelled off American things he'd seen with Kentucky Fried and a company called Post Winston Press and others. But he was an absolute gem at it. And because I was based in Melbourne, a lot of the national contracts say for what photocopiers are we going to have in our stores, and it was two photocopiers, but all of a sudden for a photocopier company, that's an order that we'd put in of 1,000 photocopiers. We wouldn't buy one or two,
Wow.
And those sort of numbers. And there was a lot of the national contracts, their head offices were also in Melbourne. So when he did come to Melbourne, say once every quarter, I think he used to come, he'd tee up all these appointments like that, and I'd run him around to them. And he said, no, don't stay in the car. You come in with me. You don't have to say anything. I just want you to be present. Mm-hmm. And what I found by witnessing firsthand how Paddy operated on the big numbers was the respect that he had for the families of the people that worked for them. Was quite incredible. And he said, we could have gone with this other company, it's X amount of dollars cheaper per year, which would have saved us, $50,000 or whatever the number was, He said, however, these people have got families, and I know a lot of them. And he said, by us moving our account to this other company, we would directly affect them and their kids. And I went, wow, thinking to that level. And, lots of ethical stuff that he taught me about business, where it's not all about the dollar. Ethics is way better. You do your ethics right and the money will flow,
Beautiful.
Money will follow.
And as you say, the word fam, I mean, you've used two words there that are super powerful. One, modelling. First of all, Paddy modelled franchises that he saw in the US, and then you really seeing firsthand where you could model not just what he might have done or said, but the thinking and the philosophy and the values that underpinned it, not the least of which there is also the power of family. I mean, what's one of the primary motivators of us all as human beings is for our families, and to respect our families and respect other people's families and have an interest in our families. Often, why do we do all this? We want to do it for our families. So that it's a universal value almost, isn't it? The power of family.
Oh, most definitely, yeah. He was just such a great man, and had commanded respect himself, from all the staff and all the franchisees that were eventually set up. Yeah. So, I was very, very, very grateful, still am today, for having worked with him,
Wow, what an incredible amount of gold is just there. But I'm going to go further because I've taken notes myself as I was re-listening to the interview. There's so much in there around transforming performance and creating high-performing sales teams. Now, of course, one of the things was Damian came from printing and radio before he went into newspapers. So he brought in ideas and thinking from outside the industry. And often you've got to do that, bring in thinking from outside, because people in an industry, once they've been in there for a while, like newspapers, start to have what we call industrial myopia. That is, they start going, well, we've never done it that way before, or we've always done it this way before. It's not possible to do it any other way. And you've actually got to have, literally, as they say, out of the box, outside the paradigm thinking. So when Damian brought in a new language and new KPIs around relationships, not even talking money, talking process. NLP says use the right process, get the right result. Measure the process. How many meetings have you had? How many phone calls have you had? Which, of course, is when I brought in the R factor, frequency times quality of communication. R factor is frequency times quality, where quality is friendliness times value, where you're being of value. And we're managing the sales team and having different quality meetings, looking at the meetings and engaging. And Damian talks about respect, the different levels of respect, which of course ties it back into the induction. What happened on day one? What happens on day one? What happens on day one? What happens in week one? What happens in month one is going to set you up for success or otherwise failure if you don't get that induction, inducting the new person into the sales tribe, the sales team. The colour zone system, which Damian adopted, and then the thinking and changing of the thinking. I love Damian's point. Good relationships equals good business. That's a mantra he used. Now, again, the other thing he talked about was the power and the courage, the authority and the courage to call it. If you see someone operating outside our values in terms of ethics, in terms of respect, you can call it, including calling the boss. Call the boss. I was working with another client the other day where they said, one of the low-level staff members at Bunnings called the state manager for not behaving in the way that he wanted them to behave. And then he talked about the role of the outside coach, consultant, because the way he and I worked together, and he said it gave me power as a manager to actually implement these new thinking, because I had this outside person bringing those ideas in, and we worked. I call it 1 + 1 = 10. When the manager and leader of the team is committed, working with the coach, we get a synergistic exponential effect of 1 + 1 = 10. And look at the results. 82% greater, higher performance than the last sales record. In other words, we didn't just beat the sales record, we smashed the sales record. 82% higher. As he said, mate, that's a number, but it's millions and millions of dollars in extra revenue as a result of it. Think about it. Millions and millions of dollars in extra revenue. He also talked about this has got to stop conversation, that the behaviour was not helping the person, was actually shooting themselves in the foot. They're on the verge of getting the sack. And we had the this has got to stop conversation, but I actually facilitated it, so they came to the conclusion themselves, this has got to stop. And at that point, that's when the tears come, because they have a paradigm shift of, you're right, I've got to change. How am I going to do it? And we decided, just pop by, just pop by, just pop by. Forget just popping by only when you have a rate change. Just pop by. Hi, I'm in the area. I thought I'd pop by. The power of the pebble being dropped into the pond and waves being created. The pop by conversation, the drop-in is just an incredible strategy, and you become part of the furniture and you pick up intelligence, and the people say, I was just thinking about you. Just beautiful. He also talked about ethics, and his mentor, Paddy, focusing on the family. Everyone's got a family. Why the hell do we do it in the first place? We want a betterment of our family and the power of the family and the workplace, and acknowledging families and modeling that, modeling, finding a high performer. What do they do? How do they think? How do they talk? How do they make decisions? And that's so useful, just hanging out with a master, just watching them do what they do, particularly someone you want to be like. So, as I say, working in partnership with a willing manager makes all the difference. Just like I did with David Horlock at BSI, Damian at Community Newspapers was another example of that. The willing manager who is going to support and behave in accordance and reinforce the behaviour, which is all the work of Broad and Newstrom. The work that the manager does before and after the training and coaching is more important than what the trainer actually does themselves. But when you get it working together, Motorola found the same thing. When you actually have the management supporting the coaching training, and then you actually implement in the field coaching, you get a massive exponential benefit. I also note he said fortnightly meetings, when we met with the team every fortnight. So there was a regular cadence, a regular routine of coaching and conversations and accountability for what are we doing to get Kaizen, sales performance Kaizen, relationship building Kaizen, continuous and never-ending improvement. Look, I hope you got something out of that, because there's so much in there, and I do thank Damian Green again. All the great work he's now doing with his B Central up in 2J and producing WA Manuka honey, just beautiful. If we want to find out more, this is what we do, folks. This is why we're so passionate about the area of sales and helping sales teams and sales managers and CEOs who are committed to growth and having more fun in business, having more joy. As Damian said, it gave me power as a manager, but it also gave me incredible joy to help these people who, as he said, now it's well and truly over 20 years ago, the lives we've changed. Literally, one of them went on to be a national, in fact, the woman that I actually did the coaching with went from almost getting the sack in that team to being a hugely successful national manager. I get warms the cockles of my heart. I feel like Uncle Lee has done a marvel, and we actually still stay in contact on Facebook, which again is part of that relationship building, lifelong relationships. Want to find out more? Touch base. I want to share the R Factor with you. I want to share it with your sales team to help you realize your full potential. That's why we say, let's put wings on the business. Let's put wings on your sales results. Let's put wings on your people. Let's put wings on your life. It's such a joy when I do that with a willing manager, a willing partner who is serious. When I say partner, I mean business partner who's serious about growing the business, but also changing lives. Thanks for listening. I'm Lee Farnell, and thanks again to Damian Green. I'll see you in the next episode.